Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Festmeyer, and in this lesson we're going to begin to study major scales by learning how a C major scale is constructed. First, notice that I've included a piano diagram with all of the note names. Now, in order to construct any major scale, there are a couple of terms that are really important. The first term is half step. A half step simply refers to the distance from one key on the piano to the next closest key. So let's go ahead and examine some half steps. If I start here on C, the closest key is this black key up above, and we could call that either C sharp or D flat. If I start, for example, on this black key, F sharp or G flat, the note a half step up would be G. If I start here on B, the closest key moving up would be C, since there is no black key in between. Therefore, B to C is another half step. Of course, we could also move down by half step. For example, if we start on this key, G sharp or A flat, and we go down to the next closest key, we would land on G. Or if we started on F and moved down to the next closest key, we would land on E. For our major scale construction, we're going to focus on moving in an ascending direction, therefore moving up. So we'll really focus in on half steps moving in that direction. The next term that we need to understand for our major scale construction is whole step. Now, a whole step is simply putting two half steps together. So if I start here on C, for example, moving up by one half step takes me to C sharp or D flat. I could use either name. Moving up by one more half step takes me to D. So therefore, C to D is a whole step. If I start on a black key, for example, if I start on F sharp, or I could call it G flat, move up by a half step, I end up on G. Move up another half step, I end up on G sharp or A flat. So therefore, F sharp to G sharp is a whole step. Or I could use one of the other letter names, but it's more typical to use the same type of accidental. So I would more typically say F sharp to G sharp or G flat to A flat. For another example, if I start here on E, a half step up is F, since there is no black key in between the E and F. So I have a half step from E to F, and then another half step from F up to F sharp or G flat. So therefore, E to F sharp or G flat is a whole step. It is typical, though, when we're talking about whole steps, to use letter names that are consecutive. So if I start on E, I'm more likely going to use the name F sharp, since E and F are next to one another in the musical alphabet. One final example. If I start here on B flat / A sharp, go up a half step, I end up on B, another half step on C. Therefore, this black key, A sharp or B flat to C, is a whole step. Again, it's typical to use consecutive letter names when talking about whole steps, so it'd be typical to say B flat to C is a whole step. To notate any major scale, we're going to use a two-step process. The first step is to notate what we call a diatonic scale. So we start on the letter name of the scale. So in this case, we're writing out the C major scale, so we're going to start on C. A diatonic scale is simply one of each letter name of the musical alphabet starting on that starting note. So our diatonic scale for C will be C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And then whenever we write out a scale, we always cap it off with the note that we started with, so we'll finish with C. So this is our diatonic scale starting on C with one of every letter name. Our next step in writing out any major scale is to follow the pattern whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And this, of course, refers to half steps and whole steps, or the distance from one note to the next note. So now we'll check the whole steps and half steps and the notes against what are on the piano to determine if we're following the correct pattern to create the C major scale. So first I have C to D in music notation, and I'm looking to have a whole step between those two notes. If I look up here at the piano, I can see C to C sharp / G flat is a half step, and then to D is another half step. That makes C to D a whole step, so we could keep it the way that it is. Next we have D to E as a whole step. Let's check that against the piano. D up to the black key is a half step. The black key to E is another half step. Therefore, D to E is a whole step. So that's what we want. From E to F, we're looking for a half step. Here we have a half step from E to F. Since there is no black key in between, F is the closest key to E. Next, we have a whole step from F to G. Let's make sure that that's what we have. F to F sharp / G flat is a half step. Another half step would take us to G, so F to G is a whole step. Next, we want a whole step from G to A. We have the same situation. G to the black key is a half step. Black key to A is another half step, so G to A is a whole step. And then A to B is the same situation. A up to the black key is a half step. The black key to B is another half step, making A to B a whole step. Finally, we end with B to C, and we're looking for a half step. There is no black key in between these two white keys, so B up to C takes us to the closest key. Since we are able to write a diatonic scale starting on C and then confirm that we are following this pattern, therefore we have a C major scale. Now the C major scale is the only major scale that just uses the white keys on the piano. There are a number of other major scales that will incorporate some combination of white keys and black keys, and we'll check out some of those in the next video.